Hello. So it is Sunday, which means it's time for my weekly wrap up. And I read 8 books this past week, which is great. That's one above what I normally read. We got a couple mangas in there. So let's just get started. First up, I read, it is a standalone single volume. I Married My Best Friend to Shut My Parents Up by Kodama Naoko, which is about this young woman who is very career driven, and her parents keep wanting her to settle down and get married, have kids. And so she ends up marrying her female best friend in order to shut them up, basically. And it's very cute. I really enjoyed it. I kind of wish that it wasn't a standalone. I wish that there were more volumes. I wish that it would keep going, because I would definitely continue on a series of this. Just the two characters. I really enjoyed it. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read definitely my worst book of the year. This is on par with when I read The Last Christian by David Gregory, which I still remember as being absolutely terrible. And it might be, part of this might be my almost anti-religious state of being. But oh my God, was this bad? I wasn't expecting it to be this bad, because they made a kids version. I read a couple of volumes of the kids version when I was a kid. I don't remember them being awful. I remember them being pretty bad, but I don't remember them being like the worst thing I've ever read. This, one of the worst things I've ever read, if not the worst thing I've ever read. And that is the first book in the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. I will say the one good thing about this book is that I was able to finish it today, because it's so poorly and simply written. Oh my God. You can tell that this is written for barely literate people. Like, it is so bad. The writing is terrible, and the logic is terrible. Anyway, what this book's about, if this was like a phenomenon, it had a TV show with fucking Gary Busey in it. Okay, this is about the rapture happens, and this is about the leftover people on Earth, which is honestly, even as a non-religious, anti-religious person, sometimes, most of the time, is an interesting concept. That's an interesting concept. But this man right here, he is I'm pretty sure it's this man. One of these guys is like a evangelical preacher, and you can really tell, but just the writing is terrible. It's so oversimplified. It is just bad. It's bad. It is on the bottom, because I now at some time, like about a month into the year, I started keeping a list. I'm going to be putting every book I've read, ranking them, so I can have I don't know, I just like ranking things like a spreadsheet. And this one's at the bottom, very bottom, 1 out of 5 stars. It's just bad. It's just poorly written, the idea is interesting, and it is a fast read because it's so poorly written. It's just 1 out of 5 stars for sure. Oh my God, this was terrible, and I cannot wait to get rid of it. I'm glad I got it off my TBR, because now I don't have to think about it ever again. After that, I read a childhood book. This was a reread. And before I read this, I was thinking, oh, well, I only really ever read a couple of these different stories in here. I remember reading the Wizard of Oz one, and the Tom Sawyer ones, but then again, I also read Tom Sawyer when I was a child, so it was I don't know if I remember this or do I remember reading from the actual book. But as I was reading this, I was no, I read probably everything in here except the poetry, because it took me a while to really be able to appreciate. It took me till college to be able to appreciate poetry that wasn't Edgar Allan Poe. So I probably did read the Poe one in here, but I wasn't a poetry person. Even in college, I'm kind of ugh. Even now, I'm ugh. And that's this best loved selections from children's classics, from Winnie the Pooh, Wizard of Oz, Tom Sawyer, Van Winkle, Black Beauty, and then poetry by Shakespeare, Longfellow, Browning, Poe, Keats, Coleridge, Emerson, Lear, and other literary immortals. This was published in the 60s, so this was definitely one of my parents, and then it just kind of ended up coming with them. But no, I remember reading this book when I was, when we were on vacation. When I was 5 or 6 years old, we would bring this book, and I remember reading it. Yeah, no, it's mostly nostalgia points, I think. I did give it 5 out of 5 stars, I think, mostly because of nostalgia points, but we got illustrations, and there were, I said, I remembered as I was reading this, I remembered it more and more and more. I probably definitely skipped the Christmas Carol, because even now I'm oh my God, Dickens needs to calm the hell down. Where was the one that I read? I was oh my God, I remember reading this so many times. It was about the cat and the mouse. Strip Van Winkle. I'm pretty sure it was after that. Oh, we got This Was Family Robinson. Where are you? Where are you? Cat story. I definitely read it because it had a cat. It was a cat story. Come on. It was sooner than that, I guess. I must have missed it. It's Tom Sawyer. Yeah, this one. The Cat and the Mouse in Partnership. So fun. So I read that, reread that. It was a fun time. Then I read another volume of manga. It is the 21st volume of Komi Can't Communicate. I did like it more than like volume 20. Again, though, these are 20 and 21 are the only volumes of the series I've ever read. Because that's sometimes just how I do things. I'm still not interested in going back to number 1 and reading them all. It's cute enough. It's all right. This basically follows this girl who is very socially awkward, and she decides she wants to start making friends and stuff like that. And so by this point in the series, we've already made quite a few friends. Like, we're doing good on that route. But no, I did enjoy this well enough. Maybe it's because this one I did have some background because I had read volume 20 earlier. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was okay. It's not, I'm still probably going to watch the Netflix series, but who knows. After that, I read 2 books. I can't talk right now. I read 2 books with different groups of my 5th graders. The first one is Brian's Winter by Gary Paulsen. I've never read this book. The only Hatchet book I've read is Hatchet. And I'm not a huge fan of Gary Paulsen. I know a lot of kids like him, so I tend to like stalk him in like classroom libraries, and I can tell the kind of kid who's gonna like him, but this is okay. It's okay, you know. I wasn't a huge fan of Hatchet. In fact, when I was, younger, when I was the age that you're supposed to read Hatchet, I hated it so much. I just thought it was boring as hell. This is okay. I think it is interesting from like a writing standpoint, that Paulsen does like, you know what if this happened instead, and decided to write a whole spin-off of that. I think he wrote like 4, 5, he did that like 4 times. Like, he just keeps going back to this kid and this story, which is, I mean, do what you want. It was okay. 3 out of 5 stars. And after that, The Toothpaste Millionaire by Jean Merrill. In no other children's book that is 90 pages long can you learn about stocks and racism and entrepreneurship. There's a lot going on in this book. It's not bad. It is decent. It's not something I'd ever even heard of. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars too. After that, next one is technically a reread, but when I read it previously, the translation that I had read, as I think is the case with most translations, was in poetry, was in verse, it wasn't in prose, and that is the Iliad. I read this in college. I was an English major. I read the Iliad, and I've always preferred the Iliad to the Odyssey, just because, I don't know, I like the characters more, and this one, while it was sometimes a slog, I'm not gonna lie, it was sometimes a slog. The parts that hit really, 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 really hit. Like, they were, like, one, the big event in this one, when Patroclus goes and gets killed, and they're protecting his body, and Achilles is just like, oh, like, they hit really well, and it's like, this is one of the first examples of, human creativity. 5 out of 5 stars. And after that, the last book that I read this past week, Whisper Down the Lane by mcleod Chapman. This is a satanic panic story. It's very, very heavily inspired by the McMartin preschool case, which, if you're not aware, it was during the satanic panic in the 80s and 90s, and these kids started saying that their preschool teachers were committing like satanic rituals with them, and it's the most ridiculous thing in the world, but people believed it because people are just genuinely afraid of an imaginary guy that lives under the earth. Do you want out? But no, it got these even though these kids were sprouting absolute nonsense, it got these 5 people, I think there were 5, it was a handful of like preschool teachers there that were put in prison, and it's just so stupid. But this is very much thought of like that, and this takes place in 2 timelines. One of them is during the 80s, where this 5-year-old kid who is hasn't had a great life, he ends up kind of helping to kick off this sort of same panic around his like kindergarten teacher, as well as in the present day when this child is now a man, and the same thing is starting to happen to him, which I think, honestly, based on the fact that we've had a whole ass like panic over the fact that Lil Nas X used like satanic imagery. I just can't with people sometimes. I say, it's so fucking stupid. It is so fucking stupid. Anyway, it was a decent book. I mean, if you know anything about Satanic Panic, some of it is gonna be kind of like repeat, like, yeah, I know, no shit, yeah, yep. But it's not bad. It's kind of fun. It's kind of gimmicky. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Currently, I'm reading The State of Us by Sean David Hutchinson, which I think would have done a lot better if it hadn't come out a year after Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I looked up because I was like, when did this come out in comparison to Red, White, and Royal Blue? Yeah, reading this one. I'm almost done. It's very quick. Hutchinson's books are always so quick to read. I think the only book of his that I haven't enjoyed was Howl. Everything else I've really liked from him, and they're always, even Howl was pretty cool. So these are the books I read this past week. That is all for today. I'll talk to you later, and goodbye.